Are you someone who really struggles with feeling guilty about spending your money? If so, I might have the right solution for you, and that is values based spending. Values based spending is basically just a way for you to ensure that all of the money that is coming out of your account is going towards things that you actually care about. Financial expert Ramit Sethi talks about values based spending all the time. He's where I initially learned this concept. He's a podcast called Money for Couples. He has the Netflix show I Will Teach You to Be Rich. His book is also called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And basically, his whole approach is to spend lavishly on the things that you love and cut mercilessly elsewhere. The reason that I love this so much is because I think that a lot of us spend our days kind of just going through the motions and not being super intentional about how we're spending our money. The concept in it of itself sounds very obvious, but the problem is that most of us get sucked into just like day to day spending, and we might spend our money on how other people value spending their money just because we're in a social circle with them, or even because we see them on TikTok showcasing some sort of item and we think that that's where we should be spending our money too, even if it's not something that we care about. I think in general, spending can feel a little bit icky if it's going towards things that you just don't value, which is why this framework is so powerful. I feel like when you're spending on things that either you don't really care about or you feel like are a waste of money or maybe give you a temporary sensation of excitement, but then that dwindles quickly after you make the purchase, that can lead to feeling misaligned with how you're spending. And I think that when you actually take the time to think about what you value and make sure that your spending reflects that, you can feel very empowered spending money, which is, I know, an emotion that a lot of people don't really have around money. A lot of people just purchase something and then immediately feel guilty no matter what the purchase is. And that is a terrible way to live life. I feel like when my financial life really started to change was when I actually adopted a values based spending framework. So, to kick off this new way of budgeting, I really had to start by looking at what I was spending my money on and think about what I actually cared about. I feel like it was easier for me to start with the what I don't like and then work backwards to the what I do like. So, something I realized that I don't value spending money on is nice makeup and nice skincare products. Like any sort of like toiletry. I don't really care to spend a lot of money on that. Like it just doesn't make me feel good. I'll have a momentary sensation of excitement when I pick up like a Drunk Elephant moisturizer at Sephora, but then immediately I stop caring that I have that product and I don't even use that product actually. So that was something that I feel like I started to do was I just started to buy like expensive shampoo and conditioner. I was buying Olaplex and I was buying like fancy skincare products from Sephora and buying fancy makeup products. And it was really just because I saw everyone on TikTok doing that, not because I actually cared about those things. So that was one of the first cuts that I personally made because I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, an SPF moisturizer from Target does the same job for me as a La Roche Posay one does. And maybe someday I will care to spend more on those things. But for me, that was an easy cut and something that felt good because I was like, okay, I'm reclaiming money back into my budget to put towards things that I actually do care about. Another thing that I've been recently coming to terms with more, and I'm not perfect about avoiding this one, but I don't really care about fancy dinners or fancy cocktail bars. And this is where the tension comes in with values based spending is a lot of people that I know do value spending on those things. So when they propose hanging out, it'll be like, oh, do you want to go check out this fancy new restaurant? Or do you want to grab drinks after work? We can go to this hot new spot in the seaport. And something about that just never sits right with me after I'm done with the experience. Even though it's fun to hang out with someone and have some bonding time, I'm always just like, oh, I spent $90 on two cocktails and a couple appetizers. Like that feels gross to me. And I don't feel good after that experience. So that's, I think, where values based spending can get challenging is when your social circle values something that you don't value. And I'm still working on recalibrating that one and like being better about proposing alternative plans. Because it's not that I don't like going out to drinks or dinner. It's just that I don't need to go somewhere super expensive or sceney to do that. Like I don't really care about going somewhere trendy, honestly. I'm not a trendy food person. I'm not a foodie. I think realizing that has freed me of a lot of pressure. I think living in a city, there's a lot of pressure to be at all the cool new restaurants. And I just realized that that is not for me. And I will feel better about money that is spent elsewhere. Some other categories that I don't value as much include takeout. That was one that I realized several years back when I was really like getting kicked off of my personal finance journey. But actually, let me reframe. I care about takeout. I do love having takeout, but I like to go pick it up myself. So I don't really care about paying delivery fees. I will just get my ass out the door. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Like I can walk to so many good places. I would rather do that than have something delivered to my door. I don't value spending money on Ubers. Like, I am not the person who's gonna be Ubering all around Boston to each of my plans. I literally will take maybe like 5 Ubers a year. Do not take Ubers. I always am taking public transportation or riding a bike or driving my car. I just rarely spend money on Ubers because, first of all, I don't really enjoy being in an Uber. Like, I don't really love being in someone else's car. But secondly, I just can't stand that use of money because I actually like walking places and taking the train. Like, it doesn't bother me too much. So that's what I typically avoid. And the last thing that I really don't value spending money on is super fancy clothes. I am perfectly fine with more middle of the road clothes. I will sometimes spend more if it's like a really cool vintage piece that feels unique, but you won't catch me shopping at like Aritzia or Staud or Cezanne or like more expensive stores. Again, I know a lot of people value spending money on that, and that's great, but that's just not where I feel good about my money going. Now let's talk about what I do value because I think it's equally important to like know what you care about so that when you spend money, you are getting a distinct benefit from it. So things that I do value spending money on include coffee. So I like will never not get a coffee while I'm out. I probably buy takeout coffee like almost once every day. And I feel fine doing that because again, I'm very like intentional about where I'm spending my money elsewhere, but I'm not going to force myself to have the office Keurig. Like, no, I'm going to go buy a yummy oat milk latte from around the corner, and I don't feel bad about spending that $5 doing that. We also buy, me and my husband buy like fancy coffee beans. I mean, kind of fancy. They're like $12 a bag, so it's not like crazy. But we order like $100 worth every other month and just have like, these really good beans on hand. So we care about spending money on that. In a similar vein, I care about spending money on good quality food. So I am happy to do a lot of grocery shopping at Whole Foods. Like, our grocery budget is pretty high every month because we like having good quality food. There's some things that I'm happily going to buy store brand for or like get from Market Basket, but lately we've been a little bit more intentional about getting like good quality meat and good quality produce from a place like Whole Foods. I also really value spending money on travel. That always makes up a huge portion of my budget every year. I love going on big international trips. I love little weekend trips. Like, I love any sort of trip, and I'm always happy to spend the money on it because it gives me a great experience and it feels very aligned to how I like to spend my money. And the last thing that I will value spending money on is stuff for my home. I love being home. I like having a home that feels beautiful and cozy. So I will spend money on nice candles, on decor that makes it feel better, on nice blankets. Like, those are things that I do value spending money on. And again, once I identified these categories, I think that my budget just started to fall into place and I started to feel really good about where my money was going. Because before that, I think there was a lot of pressure in my life to just kind of spend lavishly in every area. And I do see this on TikTok. Like, sometimes I'll look at people and be like, huh, you get the luxury version of everything, like the luxury apartment, the luxury car, the luxury skincare, the luxury food, the luxury clothes. There's no limit. And I think that a normal person, and again, some of these people are like influencers who are probably making $500,000 a year in brand deals, but a lot of people are not making that and still making spending decisions like this, probably because they're just exposed to it on TikTok, and that's what seems to be the right move, is to spend money on these types of products. I'm here to say that the normal person cannot do that, and the normal person probably should exercise some discretion in where their money is going and be intentional about where they want to put it. Which, speaking of, then comes the decision of, okay, how much money of my budget should I be allocating towards discretionary spending? I think Ramit's framework says up to 35% of your budget. And there's also the 50-30-20 rule where it's like living expenses are 50%, 30 expenses can be like fun money, and 20% can be towards future savings and investing. So whatever framework you abide by, you can kind of pick your own framework, but make sure that you are earmarking money for the future in whatever way feels right for you. But of that fun money bucket, that is where you should really be focusing on, is distributing these funds towards things that you care about versus don't. And I guess a little bit of it can go into needs as well, because if you do value living in like a super nice apartment, for example, that's going to raise your living expenses. So I think it's kind of it's more of an art than a science. I don't think there's a perfect framework for figuring this out. I think it's mainly just that within the confines of all the money that you're spending on your life outside of what you're setting aside for the future, make sure that you are distributing that in a way that feels aligned to your values. And I think that everyone's version of alignment is going to look different. I don't have any one category that I'm so passionate about that I will spend every single discretionary dollar on that category. But I do have friends who probably do fall more into that camp. One of my friends is a avid skier, so I would probably guess that most of her discretionary spending in the wintertime goes like almost entirely towards skiing and towards like lodging for overnights when she's out at the mountains. But I know her and I know that she's not spending a lot elsewhere. Like she's typically like bringing her own food and she tries to keep like her clothing expenses down. Like I don't think she's buying like really expensive things otherwise. So that's an example of someone who's probably going to the extreme of like they have a strong value that all of their money goes towards and they cut back pretty much everywhere else. I don't have that level of passion on anything. So for me, it's a little bit more balanced. And this is again where it becomes more of an art than a science. I think in general, just sitting down and thinking about these things can help you feel really empowered by spending money. And spending money starts to feel like something that enables the life of your dreams versus something that's taking away from the life of your dreams. What do you value spending your money on? Comment below with what categories you value, as well as what categories you don't value, because I think that's actually more interesting is like, what don't you like? So hope you enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day.